going to quickly pass it over to Irene, who is our Spanish interpreter for the day. Irene?
Yes, thank you, Natasha. Buenos días a todos. Yo seré la intérprete de español hoy. Después de que la función de interpretación esté encendida, mirará debajo de la mano derecha de su barra de herramientas aparecerá un globo. Escoja ahí en el globo el idioma que usted prefiera. Le pone clic y saldrá inglés o español y usted escoge español si es su preferencia. Good morning, everyone. I'm Irene. I'll be your Spanish interpreter today. During the event, we will have the interpretation. Once the interpretation is turned on, you will see on the bottom of your toolbar on the right hand side a globe. Click on the globe and you can choose the language of your choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. And again, thank you all for being here. I just want to do a mic check. Can I get a thumbs up if you can hear and see me okay? Okay, thank you. Again, welcome everyone. My name is Natasha. I am Raise Your Hand staff, really a parent organizer, LSC organizer, and just, I'm a CPS mom. So a lot of the things that happen in our city, I feel, and just really organized. So I'm involved in my community. And so one of the things that really makes me feel good about despite COVID-19 is that we can still have spaces like these that, bring people together, right? To talk about things that we are passionate about, that we care about. So again, thanks y'all for being here and filling this space. We have here on Zoom, if you're in the chat, please use the chat for reflections, to share your thoughts. The panelists and our speakers today can hear or feel your vibrations when you use the chat. If you're on Facebook watching us live on social media, please feel free to put comments, questions, and reflections in the chat. And once we're done with today's event, the panelists can see your vibrations and interact with you, a little bit later on. So if you have questions, there's a function for you to be able to put those questions in there. As time allows, we'll be able to ask those at the end of our program. So this is interactive. It's a safe space, whether you are passionate about reimagining safety in schools or you're new to the conversation, all are welcome. We really want to open up a conversation that has been historically difficult, but we feel like the time is now, and a responsible response to what we're seeing, the harm that we're seeing in our schools really is now. So a little bit of background. The history of Chicago Public Schools, Chicago Police Department's School Resource Officer program is decades old. In the early 90s, we saw a sharp influx of cops in hallways and classrooms at the same time that we saw our resources and career technical courses being stripped from our schools and community, right? There's this legacy of the program, the SRO program in CPS, that has had a devastating effect on Chicago's children, our future leaders, right? So the history and research informs us that the CPD program of having cops in our hallways, beginning in the K-8 and matriculating on through high school, for that educate children who are predominantly Black, with specialized and diverse needs, that are Hispanic and Latino, Indigenous, and all protected categories really of children are harmed, physically assaulted, and arrested at staggering at a disproportionate rate. So again, we have to respond, right? We see this, the research is there, the push and momentum for police-free schools is not new. It's decades old. And so today in this conversation, what you're going to hear is folks who are saying what has been said, and really asking folks to listen, learn, conversate, use that chat, and reflect with us. And at the end of this program, we're going to share opportunities for you to get involved, and really to attend some upcoming workshops where we're going to dig deeper into this conversation. So I'm going to get us started. Again, thank y'all for being here. Today, we have a great lineup of folks here. So we want to start with our youth because we saw in summer 2020 where CPS's youth literally, led a very impactful, as you saw the reflections in the opening video, movement that made a lot of sense. And quite honestly, moved a lot of folks to prioritize this. So we have Caitlin here with us today, who's a CPS youth leader. After Caitlin, we're going to hear from Rena, who's also a CPS leader, youth leaders, and member of Good Kids Mad City and the Shy Student Pandemic Response. We also have Lux with us, who is a CPS youth leader and member of the Shy Student Pandemic Response Collective as well. And then we're going to hear from Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor, representing Chicago's 20th Ward. And, with over 20 years of LSC experience and community organizing. She's a neighbor, she's a friend, and excited to hear from Alderwoman Taylor today about her position and as a CPS mom, right? Then we're going to hear from Ari, who is a CPS high school English teacher. This is her 5th year at Simeon, which is located on Chicago's South Side. Through Simeon's Young Activist Club, she and her students have worked alongside community organizers to combat the $95 million Cop Academy. And most recently, she worked with Cops Out CPS campaign in an effort to remove SROs from schools. Dave Stieber is a CPS high school social studies and poetry teacher that started teaching in 2007. He is a national board certified teacher and holds his master's in urban education policy. Dave writes and speaks on education and social justice issues. His partner is also a CPS teacher, and together they have 2 children who both attend CPS. Muiz is an educator at Roberto Clemente Community Academy, working in English and history, working as an English and history teacher with the 12th grade class. Muiz has served as a delegate for his school while also organizing with students through Clemente's Student Voice Committee and Clemente's Solidarity Fund. Outside of the classroom, Muiz is active in multiple efforts surrounding social justice and mutual aid. We have Dr. Melissa Lewis, a school leader of Dr. Pedro Albizu Campus Puerto Rican High School, a wife, a mother, and 2 CPS children. As a proud product of Humboldt Park community, she knows how much a quality education that centers the lived experiences matter. And then we have Desiree, Mims, is a mother, organizer, a Black organizing project member out of Oakland, California, who is committed to Black sanctuary and ensuring that all children feel safe in schools. While she serves currently as BOP's communications coordinator, Des is communicated to this work beyond a job, having been pushed out of schools herself and having to navigate through the trials and tribulations of fighting for her own education. So we have a dynamic lineup of leaders and folks with not just informed by their education, but by their lived experience. So I'm really excited to hear from y'all. Caitlin, the floor is yours. Let's get into it.
Good morning. My name is Caitlin Savato. I'm 13 years old. I'm a youth organizer here on the South Side, in the 19th Ward, actually. Because of the area and the environment that I grew up in, I knew that I had more privileges than other kids in the city of Chicago who looked just like me. So, slowly approaching my teenage years, I started to realize that the complexion of my skin, the way that I walk, talk, dress, or just expressing myself all played a dominant role in the way that the world views me, because I am a Black girl. Growing up in the Beverly Mount Greenwood area, going to a private Catholic school at first, I never knew that some of the things that I was experiencing was because I am Black. Whenever I'd walk home from school or walking home from hanging out with my friends, there was always a cop car right outside the home that I grew up in, that I was raised in. But I never minded it, and I never thought of it like that. In fact, I would thank the officers for serving and protecting our city. But little did I know that those huge words, serving and protect, was the same car that pulled up and killed Laquan McDonald. It was the same car that pulled up and raided Miss Anjanette Young's home while she was naked. And those in uniform fill our hallways, where children are present. In the past year, my life had been flipped upside down, just like most of us here, I can assure. But I hadn't realized that while I was attending a predominantly white private Catholic school, my own blood brothers and sisters were going to school right off of 63rd and King Drive at Doles Elementary School, living in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Chicago. And that's what generally caught my eye in this movement. Because when we think about safety in schools, we should and we must immediately think about prioritizing students and what environment they're in and their mental health. And within that environment comes multiple factors to take into consideration. Um, Children are human and we all make mistakes. It's a part of human nature. And in our world, more specifically in Black and Brown communities, policing is overly enforced and policing does not work. Not in our communities and definitely not in our schools. And, I can't help but think, how do you think a child is supposed to feel when they see a law enforcement officer present in the same environment that they're learning how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide? Trauma at home is a generational aspect, especially for Black people and people of color, especially here in Chicago. But little Black boys aren't criminals or having any gang affiliation. It's just a traumatic cycle that we must call out and we must root out. These traumas are only hurt by policing and heightened in our schools. And our schools should and must have counselors, psychiatrists, social workers, people who can and actually provide resources and tools to help students with behaviors present from trauma, actually, sorry. CPS and the mayor fill our schools with police. Students are still growing, learning, and adapting to new life skills and education concepts, and police presence is not safety. And I think that what I and other youth organizers and campaigns are looking for is definitely reassurance and trust. We're asking that parents, teachers, school administrators continue to challenge each other and reimagining and innovating our education and our school environments. But I think we also must learn, listen, and prioritize that the actual students who are sitting behind the desks and those who are impacted the most.
Hello, everybody. My name is Reina. I am a youth leader and a youth organizer from Good Kids Mad City and Shy student pandemic response. So what we're working on at the moment is safe return or no return. Basically, is a demand to Lori Lightfoot and Janice Jackson not to put our CPS students back into school while there's a pandemic out, while there's a virus out that is killing many. And we are also pushing for getting CPD out of CPS. CPD does not belong in CPS whatsoever. There is traumatic experiences that us as Black and Brown students have with the police, and now they're trying to invade our schools as they invade our neighborhoods. We overfund the police. Our neighborhoods are crowded with police, and now our schools are too. We were oppressed by police since we were young. We were oppressed by police in our neighborhoods, the same parks that we walk, the same streets that we walk, and now we have to walk down the hallways being oppressed by the same police that were oppressing us outside of school. And one of our protests that we had was at Janice Jackson's house. I was physically assaulted by a grown man while the police were staring us down, and they did nothing about it. They did nothing to protect our youth. They did nothing to protect our Black and Brown students as they were fighting for justice of safe return or no return, a demand that students should not go back to school if the virus is still out there. While we were getting assaulted, we almost got run over by a pickup truck by a grown man while the police were looking at us and didn't say nothing, didn't do nothing, didn't ensure our safety as they were supposed to. Police are here to protect and serve, but who are they serving? They're not serving us. They're not protecting us. They're serving for the white folks. They're protecting the rich folks. They're not protecting us. They don't care about us. Now, why are we gonna overfund police and put them in our schools when they don't care about us? While we're trying to protect our CPS students, what we're doing the most is oppressing them. It's treating them like criminals. We overfund police, underfund our neighborhoods, underfund our high schools, our CPS schools, underfund any access that we can have, but giving $4 million a day to police, while our teachers don't even make that much. And our teachers are trying to prepare our students for the future, yet they get paid less than the police that we fund to oppress us. Now, why do we have to have police in a place where students should grow, should learn, should flourish, should open their mind and become a better person, a better individual, and prepare them for the future, but are getting oppressed in school and are getting treated like criminals, as they get treated like criminals outside of school. They get watched up and down, especially our Black and brown students in our CPS schools get treated like criminals outside of school and inside of school. I thought we were students. I thought we were the future. I'm tired and sick and tired of teachers telling us that we are the future, yet we don't have a say in our future. I am tired of cops oppressing my friends, oppressing me. I've been beaten by cops over the summer, the George Floyd protest, the Breonna Taylor protest. Those same cops, the same uniform that they were wearing are the same cops that are in my schools, that are giving us tardies and getting paid more just by giving us tardies than teachers are by teaching us. The same cops that oppress us and beat us down are the same cops that are getting paid more than teachers ever will in a lifetime.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lux. I'm 15. I'm a CPS sophomore on the Southwest side. My pronouns are he, him, his. So I'm going to be explaining a bit about why I think we don't need SROs and common misconceptions. So many people bring up the fact that in the event of a school shooter, he could keep us safe, right? Well, while it has not been proven that cops directly prevent school shootings, according to the US Secret Service, it has been proven that restorative justice programs and an increase in counselors decreases violent student behavior. So let me set this straight. Cops don't prevent school shootings. They can only respond to them. The prevention of school shootings starts with available mental health resources, those of which are not available to the students in CPS. The prevention of school shootings starts with a safe space for kids. And the fact is, with CPD and CPS, it will never be any safer. I've done my research, and according to data set from CPS per FOIA request provided May 20th, 2020, compile all event reasons for all police incidents in academic years 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018. And I quote, police incidents involve Black students at least 4 times more often than white students in CPS. As stated from UChicago's Consortium Discipline Practices in Chicago Schools, Trends in the Use of Suspensions and Arrests in CPS disproportionately target Black male youth, often for subjective reasons like perceived disobedience or defiance. School-based arrest rates at CPS were twice as high among African American boys than for the district as a whole. From the Chicago Data Project, the 180 school resource officers and 21 school liaison supervisors assigned to CPS have a combined total of 2,354 misconduct complaint records on file against them. 2,354. And finally, from www.wesa.org, a review of 40 years of evaluations of school policing showed no positive impact on school safety outcomes. CPS needs certified trained therapists, counselors, and social workers that can de-escalate situations. Emphasis on the trained and certified. What we don't need are overpaid desk duty cops, like Reina said, that make more money annually printing tardies than our teachers who work so hard for us. Fourthly, I would just like to say, with that $15 million contract, we could invest in us. Your children are futures. I think poor kids deserve the best too. It's about time we stop looking at CPD as our saviors, because they aren't. Unfortunately, we live in a society that only caters to the rich white man. Police aren't here to protect people like us. Especially being in our schools, it only directly fuels the school to prison pipeline. They are supposed to serve and protect, but the only people they protect are privileged white people. I personally have never felt any safer in the presence of a cop, especially the action that was held at CEO Janice Jackson's house 2 weeks ago. I feel even more unsafe. An outside agitator arrived and right outside her residence assaulted and nearly killed many young people, and she has yet to respond. It is situations like these that really show her priorities and where she stands. Overall, I believe schools need to be a safe space for kids to flourish, learn, glow, and grow. School doesn't need to be another place for Black and brown youth to be targeted. Let it be known that the students of CPS won't stand for this and won't stop until all cops are removed. I believe you can't say you care about your BIPOC students and then allow us to be over-policed. The system treats us like robots and criminals every single day. We don't need that in school of all places. So we're calling on Janice Jackson to put words behind her actions and start making her school safer for all students, not just the rich ones. A system that does not work for every child, a system that fails thousands of kids, and a system that leaves kids behind is not a system that works and is not a system that should be kept. Thank you.
Alderwoman Taylor, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. My apologies. One of the elders in our community, Lorenzo Young's celebration of life is at the same time. He's actually in the back. And so my apologies for not being as focused. There's no question about cops out of school. It's not even an issue. If you I always say what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and which means there are not cops in lab schools. There are a bunch of schools that are not that are up north that are not in our community, don't have police. So why are you over policing young people in our community? As a mother, I remember when my son got into an incident at a school, and this school in particular had a room that was just for cops. And so they got my son with his arms behind his back in cuffs until I got there for defending himself. And so this is nothing new. The last 4 administrations of CPS have heard from parents time and time and over again that we don't want to see cops in schools. And so as an elected official, it wasn't even a question when it came up for us to ask to have SROs out of school. If you look at the number of complaints, if you look at the amount of money that they actually spend on police in our schools, it's ridiculous. But you don't have a nurse every week in a school. You don't have after school programs for young people. All young people at the school don't have technology. And so make it make sense. Why would we spend $3 million on a person who does absolutely nothing but terrorize young people or remind them of what they have to go back to in their communities instead of using it to make sure that young people get the tools they need to be educated? And so it's not a question of me what should happen, it's when. And so I want to thank young people for standing up right into this fight. You all will right the mistakes that we made. This is not on you all. I always say this generation is not lost, it's been neglected. And we gotta own that. And so it it melts in my heart to see y'all at Janet's house and Lori's house. Because that's what they deserve. That's exactly what needs to happen. We gotta get to a space where schools are stable foundations in our communities. And for a lot of folks, they are not. And that's a reflection on us. That's a reflection on the people downtown. Parents and young people have been fighting for years for police to be out of school. And so for me, it's a no-brainer. I have an autistic son who goes to school every day. And one day, the bus left him. And so he tried to get back into school, and the cop did not want him until a staff member walked out. And so, of course, I went up to the school the next day and was like, I'm not sure about how y'all treat y'all young people in this building, but it makes me question, why is this person even here? And if he doesn't know how to relationships with the school, why is he here? Because he should have known that my child was an autistic child, number one. And number two, if a child is saying they missed their bus in a community that they're unfamiliar with, you would want to have the common sense to let him in. And so whatever it is that young people, parents, and community members need from me as an elected official, we'll get it. We'll fight for it. I urge you to call your elected official. I don't care if you 1 or 100. You all pay our salaries. Y'all pay for that good dental we get and that good health insurance. We should be doing the things that you need for us to do. And what you all need for us to do is to make sure SROs are taken out of schools. Thank you all.
Thank you, Alderwoman Taylor. Thank you for being here. Thank you for, like, my heart is also with you as your community grieves the loss. I appreciate you for making space for today. Next is, I'm happy, to, kind of keep us going. Like, let's keep talking about this, y'all. Be candid. Yeah, so next is Laurentio Howard, who is the father of Denigma Howard. It is triggering to see the violence that she experienced in school at the hands of Chicago Police Department school resource officers. So Laurentio is a father and a neighbor here. So Laurentio, please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. How you all doing today? I'm glad you all gave me the opportunity to just, talk about a little brief experience of what happened back in 2019 with my daughter. For me to be there firsthand was really it was shocking to see the police behave, how they behaved, and like really didn't care about the action that they took on my daughter. To be a parent of a CPS student and to sit there and have to be restrained from watching the police watching the police tase your daughter or son and physically drag her down the stairs. And it took a lot of effort for me to hold back from not trying to do nothing to the police. But I knew had I would have jumped in, it would have been things would have got escalated more than what transpired there. But I personally see, my daughter really right now is really traumatized still from the situation, even though it was 2.5 years ago, but she still like can't sleep at night. She's going through counseling right now and everything still. And I marched down there last year for the cops out of school. I had an opportunity to talk to one of the board members that morning. I pleaded with him about voting no, about SROs in schools. He told me that he went to a school on the west side and that he felt that he was more safe with the police outside the school, going home through the gangs. I'm like, well, they wasn't in the school then. They were outside the school. And he was like, well, me personally, he just telling me some stuff. Now, I was just trying to plead with him to like vote no officers out of school, but evidently I didn't get through to him because the vote was overcast with police in school still. To make a long story short, is that a lot of, if you all believe it or not, a lot of teachers and a lot of LSC members are actually voting to keep the police in schools for their safety for some reason. I just found this out recently too. They want the cops in school because they're scared. They're scared of these students for some reason. I'm looking like that's not the way to go about it though, having police in schools. And for me actually to be there when this happened to my daughter with an IEP, and she wasn't, it was this, they have a room in Marshall High School too, where police officers are in the room that they have a computer there, a little part where the students sit at whatever until they arrest them or whatever and bring them out or whatever. But the police officers, they didn't have a reason to do anything. It was over a cell phone. It wasn't even like my daughter was fighting with nobody. She wasn't arguing with nobody. She just didn't want to give a cell phone up. And the police just wanted to overstate and overdo their job and then they lied about the whole incident. And I asked Lori Lightfoot, tried to talk to her. Janice Jackson, didn't nobody want to talk to me. The police officers are still working right now. They still working, but not in the school. They still working. Did nobody get suspended? Did nobody? They want to hide the tape too. They didn't want you all to view the tape. They fought hard from the public seeing the tape, the actual video. So I mean, I'm with you all with the kids, with the police out of school, because I firsthand witnessed the trauma that it does to a child, and who knows, it may have trauma in my daughter's life the rest of her life right now, and all over the cops in schools, and their presence there are not really there to like help the students. It's like to intimidate them, to me. That's what I think personally. But thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm with you all the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren Teo, for speaking. And again, like, my heart just goes out to Denigma and her continued self, just therapy and getting, hopefully getting beyond this. So let's stay in community, because we're stronger together. You're not alone. Next, we have Wiley Johnson, who is a local school council chair for over the last 2 years. He's a CPS dad of quite a few young Black children, and really, is starting to have deeper conversations with his school community. So he's not just a dad to his own children, but I see him intentionally bringing young people and listening to young people as part of the decision-making process and informing him in his that. So I didn't mean to throw it out there like you had 10 children, Wiley, but I always see you with the young people. So I kind of made it sound like that, a father of 3. So Wiley, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. So I am a 38-year-old Black man who has lived in the city of Chicago for nearly my entire life. I came of age during the 1990s, where just pretty much every day I saw police in my community slapping, choking, punching, harassing young Black boys and girls for pretty much any reason. So I personally believe this is a really huge issue. And then obviously we've seen where that doesn't change even in adulthood. So we have an educated Black woman inside of her own home a couple years ago. She's got out of work, unwinding, and she has 10 male Chicago police officers raid the wrong home and have her standing naked and shackled like a slave while they check her home for 45 minutes for something that they knew after about the first minute or two that they were in the wrong home. So I think this is more about, how the city of Chicago can better use their resources, and about how serious we are about really investing in our minority and poor communities. So right now I'm the LSC chair at King College Prep, and we have about, let's say, 5 or 6 security guards that work there. And let's say about the 5 or 6 security guards make about $40,000 a year. So just rough math, it's about $200,000 to $240,000 is invested into for security of our schools outside of what they're adding with the resource officers. So we're bringing additional 1 or 2 cops into our school. Do we really, and we have a student population of less than 500. Do we think adding 1 or 2 cops to those 5 or 6 security guards really makes our schools safe? No. Like, my view is that we're saying that those 1 or 2 cops will make everyone around the building feel safe, because they'll make our kids afraid. Like, just think about that. Like, we're more interested in making our kids feel afraid to make teachers and others, administration in the building, feel safe than we are in investing in their education. Like, that troubles me as a father. And like, we have a lot of kids inside of our buildings that are dealing with a lot of trauma, some undiagnosed, in some cases diagnosed mental illnesses because of the trauma that they around their homes, their communities. Like, we need more counselors, more therapists inside of our buildings so our kids can have someone to have a conversation with, someone that can make them feel comfortable. We don't need more people to make our kids feel afraid, you know. But I've seen, as sitting on a local school council, the difficulty of removing cops from buildings. So I think it's unfair to place that burden on local school councils. I think it's something that the district and the board has to decide on. They have to decide to remove cops from buildings. They have to decide on using those resources to invest in our kids' education, to invest in their future, instead of making investments to make adults around the building feel safe from our Black and brown and poor kids. That was it.
So thinking about what Wiley just said about the trauma that kids are experiencing and the support that they need, I work at Simeon, which is a school with 1,400 students, right? So out of about 1,400 students, we have 2 full-time police officers, and we have 1 part-time social worker. So I want you to just think about what message that sends to our kids. What message is the city telling our students? And what do we actually have to offer? What do we have to support our kids who are going through this? You know, not only do cops bring harm and trauma to our learning environments, they're also hoarding our city's resources, right? They are taking the city's resources while our kids, our communities, our schools are suffering. So I want to talk about some organizing that I did this past summer to remove SROs from schools, and kind of some of the big lessons that I took from it and what I'm thinking about kind of moving forward. So last summer, as the fight to remove SROs became an LSC decision, a group of CTU members created this coordinating committee for police-free schools. And so in that committee, it turned into us creating a coalition, right? We had 18 schools around the city and we strategized together. You know, this was a group of educators, students, parents, community members, community orgs like Raise Your Hand Illinois. You guys were so helpful. And we were able to use each other's support, right? We shared what was working. We shared common challenges, solutions. Some schools had already voted and removed SROs, while some of us were just organizing for the first time. So in that time, you know, we were able to see kind of the nuances of how the LSC functions, the challenges with that. And I talked to so many staff members, so many educators, specifically for my school, you know, in a hope that they would vote to remove SROs from Simeon, but also just educators around the city and trying to get them on board. And I learned 3 main things that I really want to share with you all. The first thing was that people are generally compassionate. You know, people agree that our kids don't need to be intimidated by cops while they're being taught. The other thing was that people want more resources for our kids, right? They know that they're not getting what they need and deserve and want that for them. The third takeaway, though, was the hardest. And it's that it is really hard to reimagine what schools look like without cops. And that's where people struggled, from my perspective, to then join us, right? It was they're with us on the reasoning, and then the inability to kind of figure out what we'll do instead makes it so hard for people to buy in enough to want to join us. And, you know, that's the part that breaks my heart, believing that because it doesn't exist, it cannot exist. And I get it. It is really hard to reimagine it because we've been functioning like this for so long. So, noting that noting that that's our greatest challenge, the Police Free Schools Coordinating Committee is working now and talking about potential alternatives, right? We're thinking about how can we reimagine what police free schools would look like, what they would feel like. And my big call to everyone today is just to follow your instinct. If you're hearing us and that it doesn't sound right what the kids are saying and that you don't want them to feel intimidated and afraid at school, and that they deserve more resources and you want them to have social workers to help them, socially and emotionally, then I really urge you to follow that instinct and not get caught up on what exactly is the alternative. Because if we know the first two, we know that we need an alternative. And I think that's a good enough place to start. Knowing that what's happening is not working, we absolutely need an alternative, and follow that good instinct and join us as we collectively, right, determine what that is. Because there isn't an answer, but all of us working together and being creative and knowing what we need and defending what we need and defending what our kids need, I think will make all the difference. And it will give us this option and this reality to have schools without police.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Stieber. I'm a CPS teacher. I teach at Kenwood currently. I've taught at CVS and Team Inglewood before that. So for me, I say ironic, to say the least, that all of a sudden now people are concerned about students' mental health. I've been teaching since 2007. There's never been enough student mental health care, need, anything for our students. I worked at Team Inglewood that was defunded to the point of being closed. While I was there, we had a counselor cut, librarian cut, technology coordinator cut, but we always had police officers. There was always an officer at the school, right? While that whole school was defunded to the point of being closed. The first couple of weeks of me teaching, my first time in CPS, one of the students pulled me aside and said, "Mr. Sieber, my house got broken into last night." I'm like, "Whoa, I'm really sorry. What'd the police say?" He's like, "They haven't come yet." And I was like, "What? When was this?" And he's like, "Yesterday." And so I was like, whoa, and like as a white educator and a white person, these were not the experiences that I grew up with, right? The privileges that I didn't have to deal with. And so this process of learning about like why police shouldn't be in schools, and how, for me, having white skin is a whole lot different than my students who have been teaching, since 2007. At Team Inglewood, and a lot of educators, unfortunately can speak to this, but like, when you teach in CPS long enough, depending on where you teach, you're going to lose students, right? And those students you lose them because of violence, intercommunal violence, police violence, disinvestment in communities. And when a student dies, CPS has a crisis counselor team of 4 that comes to your school. And these people are great. They're really good, but there's 4 of them, right? And they will spend a couple hours there, and then they got to go on to the next. Right. And so the whole idea of like, we don't even know what crisis counselors can really do, or like what their roles are, because we get them for 2 hours when there's a tragedy that we're all dealing with. Right. So like, you want to talk about mental health. It's recommended that there's be 1 psychologist for every 700 students. That's a nationwide recommendation. In CPS, it's 1 psychologist for every 1,700 students. Okay. The UFC lab school, they got a counselor for every 105 students. CPS, we got a counselor for every 400, right? So as Ari is saying, like, it's tough to imagine what our students should have because they've been deprived for so long, like generationally, right? I mean, we're talking Chicago Willis wagons, right? We're talking student-based budgeting, we're talking school closures. But when teachers ask for those things to demand that our students get mental health, we're called greedy, right? We went on strike, we're called greedy because we want our students to have homeless coordinators and mental health services. The students on this today, right, like, are the inspiration for all teachers. And like, it took a whole lot of students this whole summer to put a dent in the Chicago Police Department budget, right? Students defunded CPD, right? There was a $33 million budget that CPS was paying the Chicago Police Department to criminalize our students, and students defunded that by $18 million. That's huge, right? But there's still $15 million that we're paying to keep police in our schools. And so a couple things, right? We need to do something differently with that $15 million, obviously, but also where did that $18 million go, right? There's a copsoutofcps.com is a student-based website, and they have research about how much money you could spend, to actually fund mental health and how you could reallocate that. So if you had $18 million, that's 475 more mental health staff for schools, right? We're in the third largest district in the country, but CPS acts like the school to prison pipeline doesn't apply here, like it's not real, right? Like there's no data to back that up, which is absolutely false, right? There is data upon data and research upon research to show police in schools across the country and in Chicago is detrimental to Black students, brown students, students with special needs, every single student. Those are the kids that we claim to care about when it's convenient, but not right now, not during this. Our students have been failed, right? And that's ongoing. They're still being failed. Their lives haven't been valued. Educators have to deal with that. Parents have to deal with that. Students obviously have to deal with that. And all these things, right, are always happening, but they always go to school with police. The police are always funded, right, while the students are not. I've seen students zip tied and arrested in school, handcuffed in front of their friends, walked out of the building. These could be after a major fight, could be after a student coming in with a bad experience on the way to school, with trauma, and mouthing off, and a cop arrests them, right? Like these are things that happen in our schools. So, like many people are saying, we need to think about it differently, right? And this is exactly like the part that we kind of got to get to. Our students should be greeted with mental health workers. The first week of school, it should be every single student meets with a mental health worker, right? There's a needs assessment done. Some students may need mental health services once a month, other kids every day, right? And there's money to pay for that because we care about mental health so much, right? Like we all of a sudden care about mental health, right? There's $18 million, there's the care for that, all those things exist. So if the goal is education, then we should educate our students how to deal with trauma, right? We shouldn't have a cop with a gun in the background threatening them to act right, because if they don't, they're going to get arrested. We should teach them how to deal with things that they've experienced and cope them and educate them and keep them safe, right? People always be like, well, that cop is so nice. Okay, you can bring in a nice, guest speaker. You can bring in like other people to help who are trained in de-escalation, restoration, services. There's a lot of things that you can do. And so, if we're looking for role models, that's another argument I hear. We can hire Black and brown educators, right? We've pushed out them for years. That's a whole step in itself. So I know it's a shift. It's a big shift. But like, if you truly, right, believe in students and love students and value students and listen to students and believe in data, right, then you want to model like what they should experience, right? You want to give them all the resources that they deserve. And those things are all about mental health. They're not about criminalization. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Muiz?
Hey, everybody, sorry, this is Muiz Bouani. I'm a teacher at Roberto Clemente Community Academy. Apologies, I've got the mask on. Today we're at our mutual aid, our food pantry outside of Clemente, and we're restocking, so we're still working. There's always a need, so we're out here. And shout out to my students that organize this. I love them, and it's a consistent reminder on the day-to-day basis of what a world could be if we allow the young people to continue to lead, but more importantly, if we get out of the way, right? More than anything. So I teach at Roberto Clemente Community Academy. It was the third school that was able to successfully remove SROs. It was a real journey. It took a lot of time, it took a lot of patience, and we're still sitting here, like, as I was reflecting on this, extremely grateful for the young people who put this issue forward. One of the biggest struggles about working in CPS as an educator, as a person of color, is understanding like how good this district is at co-opting social justice terminology, how good this district is at trying to convince you that they are progressive, that they care about young people, but in the background they spend money that basically explain to each and every one of us how busted their priorities are, such as the SROs, right? That they will say mental health, they will say SEL, they will say all these things, but they won't put it in the budget, they won't show it realistically, and they're absolutely fine with crushing the aspirations, the hopes, the emotions of students, and that's a no-no, right? So that was something we had to fight here. We had to fight, right? We had a team, we had administration, we had leadership, we have, you know, CPS keeps a pretty tight eye on our school too, in my opinion. And you know, they would consistently talk about these things about, hey, we need to be responsive, we need to be culturally relevant, we need to connect with kids, right? But then at the same time, we pursue these grade policies that hurt students. We write up students, we escalate students, and we keep this consistent presence of someone walking around the school with a gun. And then our attitudes too towards like black and brown kids, right? Like our attitudes, right? Oh, you can be friends with the police, right? Wanting to teach a class about what to do when you get pulled over. Like, what? You serious? Like, these are your solutions for young people who are suffering in this system? This is your solution for a group of people who are every single day stealing basically money that could go to restorative efforts and that could rebuild Chicago. These people are plundering Chicago, right? Like the police budget in this city is plundering our city. So we went through this very arduous process of having these real conversations because there were people in the community deeply connected to police, right? If I had a dollar for every single person saying, I have a cop in my family, they're not bad people, right? We can't judge everybody. Even someone going as far as trying to connect with me because I'm Muslim, right? Oh, Mr. Bawani, you know how it is to have an entire community be judged over one person. I'm like, let's hold up here. Let's hold up, right? Because this isn't just an idea of a police officer. This is the idea of what we value, right? We have to really sit back and my good friend Rosana Rodriguez says this really well. The police have become a catch-all solution for so many things that unlearning or de-learning the importance of the police is a fight, is a struggle, right? Because somebody's having a mental health problem, call the cops. Someone's having a tough day, call the cops. There's a homeless person outside, call the cops, right? Those have been the attitudes that we've really taken upon, and they become part of a system and they become normalized, right? So talking to your colleagues, talking to each other, and we did a series of forums, right? The young people with their incredible data and their website were so crucial at arguing the points we were trying to make. But we also had to fight people's opinion of like, no, the cops here are good, right? Rather than taking some time and telling everybody, well, what does it mean? Right? Think about our own verbiage in the school. We constantly say, you know, students first, students deserve everything, students are the best, we love our students, but we somehow still need the presence of police officers. And those were difficult conversations to have, and you had to unlearn a lot, right? And, you know, as we're working through this, as we're looking through this, you know, CPS is not moving the ball on this. And you've heard some incredible people like Audie and Dave talk about this. They don't want to move the ball on this. Jadine Chow came to our school, met privately with admin. We had to like confront admin about this, be like, what about our young people? What about all the folks who organized around this, right? Because they're going to come up with a solution that's going to be like, well, you know, it's cops light or diet cops, right? When in reality, our students need all the services, right? One thing I'm incredibly grateful of about Humboldt Park, and I get really emotional about this, the parents in this community trust us with their most prized possessions, right? And many educators, all of us got into this looking for a deeper purpose. And these young people give us that purpose every day. So why wouldn't I spend every single thing I have to make sure they're okay, to make sure they're cared for, to make sure they have someone in their corner, to make sure they have resources, to make sure every single thing matters to them. And you have to challenge an organization like CPS like this, right? And my young people in this process are looking at mutual aid as a solution to this abolition project, right? They've set up a food pantry outside the school. They're excited when they go back in the school to set up shelves everywhere around the building where students can get supplies, because that's a learning process, right? To teach each other and tell each other that we have all the things we need amongst each other, and to get away from carcerary practices that isolate each other. So there's hope, there's a future. And for everybody listening, you know, let's keep pushing. Let's keep pushing, because if we just stop here, we know what CPS is going to do. They'll come up with a new effort. They've already tried at our school, a new effort that really doesn't answer the bell to what our young people need, what our communities need, and how Chicago needs to look in a future, one that actually loves and prizes Black and brown people, the same people who have built this city. Sorry for the long talk. It's hard on a mask, but I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Melissa Lewis. I'm the principal of Dr. Pedro Albizu Campos High School in Humboldt Park. You know, Clemente is one of our neighbors, actually. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Dr. Pedro Albizu Campos High School. We were founded in 1972 to serve dropout youth, young people that were dropping out of CPS. And now today, nothing's changed. They're dropping out and now they're being pushed out of CPS for a variety of reasons. But one of the things that we do that's a little bit different is that we center their lived experiences. We see our students, we hear our students, we love our students, and we understand that in order to really be a school community, a local community school, we need to have that love for our students that they didn't experience in their local high schools. I will be honest with you. You know, so often they'll tell you they didn't have an adult that they can trust. They didn't have a teacher they can trust. They didn't have a mentor they can trust. They didn't have a counselor they can trust. And we center that. That is the first thing that we do. We have a school that sees mental health as a priority for all. So that assessment that Dave spoke on, we do that for all 210 of our students. We literally will have a one-on-one conversation. What are you facing? What are the barriers? What do you need? What does your family need? Talk to me about your mom. Let's have a conversation. We need to prioritize the experience of our students and our families first. I also want to make mention of teachers fearing our students. That's real. That is most definitely real. And there needs to be resources and professional development and safe spaces for teachers to unlearn that, because that's most definitely the case. And you cannot keep cops out of schools without addressing that, because teachers will tell you they're not safe. And if teachers are not safe, your school isn't going to be a safe space, because that's going to come onto your students, that experience. And I can't tell you what the answers are, but I know for sure professional development and unlearning that has to happen in order for cops to be out of schools. And I am a principal of an alternative school. We serve 210 youth, and I don't have cops. I won't even allow a cop into my building. It's not conducive to learning. It's not conducive to safety. I think of, things that are having mental health professionals on site, that's safety. If I have a crisis on hand, I have a licensed clinical social worker that I can walk my student to have a conversation with about what's going on at home. Because that's how you promote safety, really addressing the needs of your students and your families and your parents, because that's another component of this. If students are not feeling safe, parents are not feeling safe, then you have parents that are re-traumatized when they enter into a school because of their experiences as young people. It's multi-layered, and you need to really get all of the people, from your clerks to your teachers to your janitors. Every single person needs to see their young person and the young people that they serve as valuable human beings. Center that experience, center that relationship. I think that the other thing that we talked about is mentoring. Every single person in your building needs to see themselves as a mentor to a young person. And Dr. Pedro Albizu Campos, our mentor to student ratio is 20. One mentor has 20 students that they build that one-on-one relationship with. Then you add in the parent, you're also communicating with the parents of these 20 young people. It's a multi-layered approach. There are ways to do this. You do not need cops in schools. What you need is mental health supports. That has to be the priority, because without that, there will be no safety. You need to be able to respond in a crisis to prevent that. I think the other thing that I wanted to uplift is restorative justice. I think the piece of the restorative justice that I think is most important is students leading that restorative justice approach. You need to have students leading that peer-to-peer conference, students leading peace circles, and giving them the skills and the necessary language to lead peace circles, so that they're the ones in charge of that. You also need teachers to believe in it, and that takes time. It's not something that's going to happen very quickly, but it's possible. I think Dr. Pedro Albizu Campos is an example of that. When we really focus on mental health, when we focus on mentoring, when we focus on creating an environment that supports and loves our students and our families, because you can't have one without the other. One of the other things that I wanted to answer came out in the Q&A about what does a community-led school look like? To me, it looks like community within your school. I should be able to see the community-based organizations that are in my community within my school. If I have a family that needs a food pantry, that food pantry should have a shop right down on the first floor of my school. If in my community-based organization, I have a mental health network, that needs to be right there in my school. I need to have those community-based organizations right in the school. I shouldn't have to send you someplace else to get the resources that your students and your families need. That to me is what a community-based school looks like. They're hand in hand. They're one and the same, working and running out of the same exact sites.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Des. I'm with the Black Organizing Project, better known as BOP. We're all the way on the West Coast in Oakland. And, you know, I think that mainly I'm here to talk about the magnificent win that we had and this incredible fight and this new phase of fight that we're facing. And so we started our BOSS campaign, which stands for Bettering Our School System, in 2011. And it was actually at the response of the killing of a young Black man named Raheem Brown. He was killed in front of Skyline High School. And I say that because it's important to note the historical context behind school policing and also, you know, general policing. The school police department that killed this young man actually was created in 1957 specifically to enforce segregation of that school and of that neighborhood in the hills. And so we started, you know, in response to his killing, and that was, you know, 10 years ago now. And it's been a long 10-year fight. And we've had, you know, so many things that I don't even have time to talk about that I know you guys have already done and engaged in all these other places as well, you know, like small reforms, policies and things like that, things that in our mind, we always had the view of abolition, and we always said that we wanted to eliminate school police by 2020. But sometimes we thought that we might get it sooner through all these efforts that we were doing, things that seemed like we were really moving forward with board policies being created, ending willful defiance in our schools in Oakland, divesting millions, you know, all these things that felt good. And I think that being in Oakland, we have a school board who's not only majority people of color, but majority people who like to play progressive. And so I feel like the overall context of our city too is our city officials and our mayor and all these people love to come to Oakland as a playground to play progressive because of our rich history with Black Panthers and all this other stuff. So they do small things like, you know, it feels good to divest 1 million out of 15 million. So let's stop there. It feels good to, you know, get rid of 4 police officers instead of like your whole police department. And so, you know, we got a few wins, but again, our main focus was eliminating school police in 2020, and really in 2016 was when things really started to speed up, and it started in the form of really trying to get this united front in the community. We're a Black organization, and so we focus on you know, our Black community and our Black students and our Black families, but that we're not the only people that are affected. And we're also not the only people that are going to enforce these new policies that are going to change and shift the narrative. We know that majority of teachers are white and usually white women. And so we also have to organize those people too. And so that was a lot of the work that was taking place. And so, you know, at the beginning of 2020, I think in March, we actually went up to our school board with a resolution that is now called the George Floyd resolution. But we went with this resolution that was built out of a plan that we built, which was a comprehensive plan on how they could step-by-step eliminate school police. And we had the room packed, you know, we had the community and everybody with us, and we were voted down. And they know that we've been engaging in this work for years, and it's, you know, we go up every school board meeting, and they knew that this was coming, but they shot it down. But then the unfortunate killing of George Floyd, and then the popular and I guess glamorization of this new police-free schools lingo and defund lingo and all these things that are going on, then, you know, then people like to feel important and they like to feel included. And so then we went back up using the momentum that happened after George Floyd's killing and said, this is your chance now to really make history and to eliminate a school police department. And so we got that resolution passed. And so in June 24th of 2020, they eliminated Oakland School Police Department. And this was an internal police department, an entire police department, not just the SROs. We had 3 levels of policing in Oakland schools. We had Oakland Police Department, we had Oakland School Police Department, and then the SROs and SSOs. And so that was huge for them to eliminate and dissolve an entire police department. But then, you know, then became the new wave of fight and all the things that we had to contend with, like working with the district and working with some of these school board members, and, you know, getting kind of outside of what we do as a community organization and getting more into the district. And that's not something that we wanted to do, but that we had to do. We had to sit with them and meet with them, you know, rewrite policies, rewrite classroom guides, and, you know, all these things where police were written in every little inch that they could be written in into these policies and stuff. So when we got our resolution passed, we knew that transformation of school was what we wanted to do. It's not just about eliminating police. It's also about transforming school culture and climate. And so we knew that that's not going to happen in a year. It's probably going to happen at least in 3 years, maybe even more, you know, to really be something that comes to fruition. And so we were like, okay, well, there's phases to these things. And so this first phase, we'll deal with the district, we'll be inside the district, and we'll rewrite these policies. But then the next phase, which is the phase that we're getting ready to embark on now, is really the community-driven process. So we want the community individuals, most impacted people, to come in and have decision-making power, to have co-convenership with the district, to change and shift the narrative even all the way there with how the district starts and how the district works and how the district creates these paradigms and all these things that happen on school campus. And so, you know, that's kind of where we're at now after eliminating that school police department. And at the same time, our city is also engaging in a huge, they have a reimagining safety task force where they're trying to defund the city police by 50%. And, you know, one thing I know a lot of people brought up the narrative of how can people imagine a world without police or a school without police. Our vision has always been for abolition, and we always have to really contend and be real with the fact that the police, you know, started as slave patrol, and they are instated to do nothing but criminalize, target, and police. And so anywhere you put them, they're going to do so. And so now that we're engaging in this conversation, even on a city level, we have to be real with the fact that if our students don't have police in schools, they still have to see the same police that may have killed Oscar Grant on BART when they get to school. They're leaving their homes and their projects, and they have housing police. We have helicopters over them 24/7. So it's not just a conversation about police-free schools. It's really about police-free communities and what we're gonna put in place of that. And that's really transformative justice. You know, restorative has not been enough. It's not going to be enough. So we need to push that. And so I just wanted to uplift everybody's work that, you know, we're all doing. And it's just amazing to see, like Natasha mentioned in my bio, I was personally impacted. I was arrested twice and kicked out of high school before even completing a full year. And that really affected me. And I didn't have, you know, the outlets that the youth have today to organize and to do. I didn't have any of that. And I felt like I was, you know, in a silo. And so seeing all the work that's being done now is just incredible. And I know that we're all just making moves in our own ways, and really police-free schools beyond Chicago, beyond Oakland, you know, it's gonna come. So thank you guys for having me.
Thank you so much, Des, for being here and speaking about, you know, Oakland and how you all as a community, like, been doing this organizing over a decade. I had attended you all's watch party to see you all's celebration after that win in December was special. So it was really good to hear you like illustrate that. So I think this conversation really gave us like an opportunity to see like we can reimagine safety in school. We have examples of that happening across the map. And one of the things that we see and we don't talk enough about here is how we actually see police having a devastating impact as well at the K-8 level. Quite honestly, the numbers, we had a friend of the coalition, you know, kind of do some research and found that at the K-8 level, our children are also arrested, beaten, and using chemical irritants to control their, you know, toddler, toddlerisms, right? And so a young person who needed care and, you know, an adult to, you know, help them understand the behavior and be able to process their trauma. Instead, we have them being ripped out of schools, taken to Hargrove, you know, which is a local, you know, inpatient mental health clinic, which, you know, is having a devastating impact on how they treat children. right? And sometimes where parents don't even know that their child has been taken out of a classroom and taken to Hargrove until they're looking for their child. So these things that are happening that we really want this conversation to like evolve to is these things are happening right now. And we see that virtual learning has not slowed down the policing and harm in a very authoritative way, right? We see young people getting truancy, families are getting court notices. We see young people being threatened for not doing their homework. We saw that in Michigan, a young lady, a young youth named Grace, right? Who was imprisoned for not doing remote learning. So one of the questions that I have for you all, the panel, like, and please just kind of pop in and just like share a few words around, how do you see some real intentional, I see there's actually a CPS decision maker that's here joining us. So using this as an opportunity to put something on their mind, what are intentional steps that you all see to get at this right now, like within the next 6 months, thinking and ideally, what do you see that we need to impress upon Chicago Public Schools, the mayor of Chicago, and the Board of Education to move us to safe schools where students are centered and not policed? Anyone want to answer that?
So for me, it starts with an elected representative school board. These folks are never going to do right by young people because they don't get it and they understand. And there used to be this saying about if we got an educator. Well, we got an educator and she don't seem to know what she's doing. And so for me, it's going to the state and to the city and just rewriting the entire policy. CPS is not something that is controlled by the city council of Chicago, which is problematic, but they expect us to help them pay their bills and get out of this trouble. And so this system just ain't created to educate kids. It's educated to do the status quo. And so think about all of the different network chiefs and CPS chiefs and CEOs and BEOs. Stevie Wonder could see you all can't get it right. And so it's just us dismantling that system and to stop sending our kids to it. I hate to say, I said 10 years ago that parents just need to boycott CPS. Because if you think about this, if none of us sent a child into CPS, what type of money would they make? And the answer is none. And so we know what it feels like to take care of each other and have our kids at home. We've had it through remote learning. We need to do this same. The only thing that this system understands is when it ain't making money. And remember, they're trying to throw young people back into schools so that they can make money. Think about this. Kids were at home doing remote learning. They were asking parents to fill out lunch forms. My kid ain't eating y'all lunch, so why am I filling out a form? Because this is not about educating young people. This is a system to keep our kids controlled and marginalized. I just blame the electeds for not stepping in soon enough. And I blame just this system. And this system is not going to change if we continue to say, well, let's try this, let's do this, and let's do that. No, let's take our kids out of a system and build our own. In Detroit, they build freedom schools. And they got like 4 freedom schools that are doing actually well. And we talked about it in Chicago. But this system is going to continue to disinvest and misuse and divide us if we continue to use it. And I'm saying that as an elected official. I'm somebody's mama. I'm somebody's grandmama. And so my responsibility and my duty is to them. Malcolm X says it better than anybody. Only a fool will let the enemy educate their children. And so this is a system we've dealt with for too long. It is not going to change. And so therefore, we just need to rewrite that entire system.
I think systems need to start prioritizing the mental health of our students and our staff. Like, you really need to really prioritize bringing on licensed social workers, licensed clinical support staff that can be there full time for your youth and their families. Like, that's key. Without that, you will not have safety.
That's right. Thank you so much. This is great. There are many questions in the chat. This is not a one and done conversation, but I do want to move us in the interest of time, to maybe going around and folks who want to give 30, 45 seconds of a final thought. And if you saw a question that is in the chat, please feel free to use that time to quickly give a response. So we will start with the youth. And then again, please feel free to go after one another.
Hello, Lex again. So I just want to say a thank you to everyone who tuned in. I'm so lucky that I was able to come here and speak my truth. I just want to answer one of the questions that I saw really quick. The what does an ideal community look like for you outside of cops? I think that just the basis is feeling safe in your school and not feeling threatened. If cops are truly here to protect us, there's no reason why you should feel threatened in the presence of one. Even from a young kid, I was always taught to be fear them, and because I was raised by my Mexican mother who was an immigrant. And so for me, an ideal community is just feeling safe and feeling wanted, feeling loved, feeling cherished. Thank you all.
Hi, Caitlin here. I think, just to wrap up, I think that it's important that we understand that this is a system and that it is passed down generationally, especially because things like trauma and these ongoing cycles that are going on, because every student is different. And I know that a lot of us are connected through oppression, because we do have trauma going on at home, especially during these times. I know that my mental health, and I've had other classmates express to me that they don't feel safe at home, or they just don't feel as though their mental state is okay right now, like harming themselves. And so I just think that it's important to realize that this is something that is passed down. And I think that it's important that we recognize that we do and we should have the power to stop it. But yeah.
Final thoughts.
I would just add that I think my final thought is really pushing and just uplifting all of us to keep reimagining and just being radical about how we want to envision our communities and our schools. And I think the more radical and the more, up here we are, it's easier to think about things in a more realistic way and make things happen. And it's realistic to not have police in communities and still be safe. We have so many qualified people in our community to teach, to be culture keepers, to be conflict, resolution officers, or for lack of better words, and so many different things, educators and stuff. And so I know that cultural competency is a huge thing, and it's hard to teach somebody who's not from your community how to understand and be empathetic to a lot of things. And it's also hard to erase or eradicate, the implicit bias and the anti-Black and brownness that is so deeply rooted in a lot of people, a lot of educators, and education in general. And so, I imagine, a freedom school. What would that mean for me? And that's Black and brown educators and staff and administrators all the way up, but also people who are empathetic to what our community is going through, not just, Black or brown, but and so, I just urge all of us to continue to think about that and dream about that, and, eventually manifest that. And we've all manifested so many amazing things just from carrying the torch of people years and years and years ago. And so, yeah, I would just say, leaving us with an uplifting kind of sentiment about how so many things are possible, and we've already done so much. This is really history in the making. So.
I was thinking about this question that was just put in the Q&A, asked about what teaching staff could do to actually kind of push this forward. Because I know both the educators kind of mentioned it as well, the other educators on this panel. And, as it's stated, CPS as a district is predominantly white in terms of teaching staff. And it's gotten more increasingly white through policies that CPS has put in, pushing out Black educators through school closings or purposefully not hiring Black and brown teachers, as reported in WBZ a few years back. And so, right, that's a problem in itself, obviously. And then also the comment that was made about the fear of students is real among educators. And I think it's two parts. One part is I think teachers just don't realize or don't have enough support of what it actually could be like. Not to say like teachers are out here trying to be bad for them, you know, obviously there might be some that are problematic, but the idea that teachers don't have the supports to the only person that you can call for support in many schools is a police officer, right? Is security, because there's no one else, right? And so we're trained to think that way, right? If a student is acting up, we're not taught what we can do differently, right? We have to figure that out ourselves, or, you know, communicate or collaborate with other educators who realize that, right? And figure out ways to kind of like create community and create space. And we all should be doing those things. And then the second part is that, you know, there's just the tropes and the stereotypes and all that stuff is just so ingrained in society and our schooling, right? And so you see a police officer and you're like, oh, they're there to keep me safe, right? And then you just keep that in mind. And so just the struggle to get police out of schools and the LSCs to vote for that has been a huge challenge for schools who haven't voted to remove it, right? And so just getting community to think about what can be done differently is huge. And also like educators need to really get involved in this too. Because as it was stated too, like police are in elementary schools. Like I asked my own kids, you know, my own kids are white and they, you know, they go to predominantly, it's racially diverse, but predominantly African-American school on the South Side. And like, I'm like, do you have police in your schools? Like, yeah. And it's just like, it's just so normalized that like, we don't even think anything different too. So I think just, it's really requires a mindset shift and a true like education shift and priority shift for our district of what's important for educators to learn and unlearn before you get into the classroom and while you're in the classroom too.
So for a system that I've had to deal with for a very long time, I was an 80s baby, I say that. And so while we had very little in schools, we had teachers and staff that actually cared for us. I never in the history of being in elementary school saw a police officer in my school. Why? Because there were parents that were involved in the school. There were community members that were allowed to come into school and provide programming. And I actually had staff and people who actually cared about me. And it was a time when Harold Washington didn't get to see LSCs coming to fruition, but he talked about if we had local school councils, we could have local accountability. Chicago Public Schools has destroyed that, and they've done it intentionally. The 50 school closings just wasn't about buildings. It was about taking that second family away from young people who actually need it. And I don't think we see it that way. To Dave's point, we don't talk about in schools that the large percentage of the staff does not look like the students that it's serving. We don't talk about that in schools where 90% of the students speak Spanish, that they even allow somebody in the school to speak Spanish. Or you have a student population where they speak English, but their parents speak Spanish, and CPS won't even provide somebody who can interpret. And so you're talking about a system that we continually pay into. I don't think students and young people realize how much money Chicago Public Schools get per student. They get a lot of money from you all. So the minute that your parents signs you in, you're dollars to them. And so if you're dollars to a system that mistreats you, think about what we need to be doing. I've never been the parent to ever think that new address that I think it's 42 West Madison now. I don't know what their new address is. I never thought that they were going to be the people to change around education. We're the people who need to change education. They're not going to do it, and they're not going to give it up easily. Chicago Public Schools has billions of dollars that they have in the budget. A lot of their budget is spent on personnel that never even touch schools. And so that's for us to think about as parents. And I've always been ready for the revolution to be televised. And so young people, parents don't want to send their kids back to those schools. Our offices are open. Parents who need help with remote learning, there are plenty of people that help you. But this system is not going to stop. It is just not. And to those elected officials who are listening to those young people that are 17 and 18 years old, run for office. It's too many people that's been sitting there 30, 40 years who don't have a clue as to what they're doing. I wish that people would have listened to young people back in the 80s and 90s, because we wouldn't be here. Because young people have been saying for decades that this system hates us. It mistreats us. We've been home since February, and I've probably learned more Black history in this last year than I've ever been taught at school. And so that's just not okay. And so to the young people, I'm inspired by you all. I thank you for lighting the fire behind our butts, because definitely because of y'all fights since last year, February, we've been at it, we've been working on it, but don't stop. Thank you.
This has been really awesome. Thank you, Alderwoman Taylor, for just keeping it real and always bringing nothing but the truth to everyone. Like you all, we had this full conversation. So if you've been with us, we appreciate you all that are still here with us this Saturday afternoon. We're moving to close, but I really just want to say for everyone who shared your experiences, to the youth who are looking for accountability in this moment, we stand in solidarity with you. If we can support you, let us know how we can, as you all continue to escalate to, for the harm that you all endure. So again, thank you all for being here with us this afternoon. Please continue to use the chat to drop your, last final vibrations and let the panel know how you feel about today's conversation. This is not the end of this conversation. What we're planning to do in the upcoming weeks is host workshops and teach-ins virtually. So from the comfort of your home, if you're on the go and you have the app, we want to continue to have conversations where we can unpack the history, the what restorative and transformative practices, and intentionally centering young people, like the whole child, while they're in spaces of learning. We're going to have workshops with educators and teachers who are going to start getting at unpacking and unlearning what how they've been moving for so long, right? And then we're going to have community spaces where we hope to bring in local school councils, parents, caregivers, folks in the community who are trained in violence and conflict resolution, and how to handle conflict, which is normal when you're a young person, by the way. So we want to, be able to mentor our young people in order to be informed in how to, live in peace and learn in peace, because we know that when young people feel safe, that they're able to actually learn. So for the team, if we could, we have a Google form that we're going to drop in the chat, and we're going to share it on Facebook as well. Click on that link. There are ways for you to participate in upcoming workshops. You're going to click on the corresponding box, and then there's going to be a Zoom link, and you'll be emailed a Zoom link, and we hope that you all will join us in these workshops. Many of the folks that you see on here today will possibly be co-facilitating those spaces. So all are welcome. If you are strong about police-free schools and reimagining safety, if you're new to the conversation, and I'll argue that there's a space for discourse for those that don't agree, because once we look at the research and share experiences, we're clear that that is the right way forward. But we're looking forward to that type of participation going forward. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. Be well, take care of one another, stay away from COVID. Peace, y'all.